Colorado's ambulance response system is at a crisis point due to COVID. Within the last hour, the state activated protocols that allow ambulance crews to only transport the most serious cases of all kinds of illnesses and injuries. The so-called Crisis Standards of Care, last activated during the 2020 pandemic shutdown, sets up a system where younger, healthier people may be denied transportation to the hospital. And suspected COVID patients who are in continuous cardiac arrest will not be taken to the hospital and will be pronounced dead on scene. The state's chief medical officer said today this is necessary because COVID cases have caused short staffing and the state's trying to limit ambulance crews' exposure to COVID. The protocols even provide EMS crews with a script to read to patients who are deemed healthy enough to be denied transportation to the hospital when they want it. President Biden says the Marshall Fire should be a code red about the consequences of climate change. The president is currently on his way out of Boulder County after he visited neighborhoods lost in the Marshall Fire. President Biden and the First Lady walked through the area near Harper Lake in Louisville. Boulder Sheriff and the Louisville Fire Chief were at his side, telling him about what their communities went through last week. The president also met with families who lost their homes, then stopped to speak briefly from the Louisville Rec Center. The president promised continued support from the federal government to help Coloradans rebuild.
Recovery here in Boulder County is going to take a long time. I'm not going to kid you. But we're going to stay with you as long as it takes. We're going to be here for every step of the way, I promise. And it's going to be better.
President Biden is currently headed to DIA, and from there he flies to Nevada for late Senator Harry Reid's funeral. Robert Sharp. We now know his name. He was one of the two people missing in the Marshall Fire, now confirmed dead. Sharp's family says he lived in Boulder County for a long time. He worked in construction. They say he loved the outdoors. Investigators found his remains Wednesday at a property on Marshall Road, not far from where the fire started. They used DNA to confirm a match. Deputies are still searching what's left of a home that's tied to the one other person still reported missing. Boulder County's emergency notifications telling people to evacuate only went out in one language, English. Now imagine trying to quickly understand a flurry of information about an emergency in your second language. Not ideal if you have an option, right? Victoria De Leon introduces us to a family in Louisville who could have used a different approach to emergency communication.
People are stronger together.
Cada uno hacemos un poco de nuestra parte.
That's especially true for the Rodriguez family in Louisville.
Estamos todos unidos.
The last time Irma and Javier were here, this house was still their home.
Perdimos nuestras memorias. Perdimos fotos de mis hijos, de mis nietos.
I don't know why our house got picked, the only house in this cul-de-sac. Our house is completely gone.
Just 5 months after moving in,
my room went first.
Their daughter, Jennifer Rodriguez, says this was supposed to be their new beginning.
This is our first Christmas that our family has been able to afford toys for my son.
They lost everything, and like so many others, had just minutes to leave.
There wasn't any notice from my mom that is only Spanish speaking. Hopefully that changes.
Even if Irma had received an emergency notification, a warning in English isn't much help.
Yeah.
Jennifer has always been the voice of this family.
It has been really tough for me. Since my parents aren't native speakers, I have had to translate a lot and finish forms and get our family the assistance that we need. And it's just been tough to just do it myself.
For families who don't have people to advocate for them, Jennifer says information and resources in their strongest language should be easily accessible.
I think it should have been notified in Spanish. I was so worried about my mom.
Irma is grateful to have that kind of support from the people who are strong for her when she can't be.
Porque yo pienso que sin ellos, no sé qué hubiera sido de nosotros.
So throughout the day today, I did spend some time going back through Boulder Offices of Emergency Management social media pages, and you will come across some of those articles, links, and resources in Spanish. Kyle, the question remains is how is that information getting to the people who need it most beyond a post, specifically those who don't have access to social media? I do want to point out that we were told that the Disaster Assistance Center in Lafayette does have support in multiple languages. I'm trying to confirm what languages those are exactly, but when we also confirmed that the Everbridge notification system was only available in English, I followed up and asked if there were any plans or if they're working on including more languages in that system. And Kyle, we still have not heard back.
I think, Victoria, there's going to be kind of a wholesale reconsideration of how our emergency alerts function. And a lot of these are opt-in check boxes. And you'd think that perhaps there could just be a check for the language of your choice, similar to the way that we do voting, because we know voting's important in this state.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really crazy to think about that if people like Irma and Javier didn't have kids like Jennifer to help them through that, and there are people like that out there, how in the world did they know where to go? How do they know what resources are available to them? It was just incredible driving into the neighborhood, looking like it was really normal. There wasn't a lot of damage, and just this one house is the only one, like Ashley mentioned, in the cul-de-sac that was destroyed. So it's definitely an issue that we're going to continue to follow up on.
Appreciate you bringing it to the forefront, Victoria De Leon.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Boulder County's emergency notification system, as we've talked about here, works primarily as an opt-in system, and many people in the path of the fire were not warned in time. Over 3 hours last week, Boulder County sent evacuation alerts to 24,000 landlines, cell phones, and email addresses. And we found that in some neighborhoods, the fire got there before the alert. Here's Marshall Zellinger.
Yes, sir. We do have a small fire. It's just south of Marshall Road on Highway 93. We're extinguishing it now. I'll get back to you here in a few minutes.
From the first dispatch of what would become the Marshall Fire, it was 11 minutes before fire crews reported the first structure burning. It was just less than 30 minutes before the first area of Boulder County was told to evacuate immediately.
We now have fire on both sides of Marshall Road, both north and south, and it's pushing east fast. So if we can let all those folks know, probably within a couple miles east, that they need to start evacuating.
Based on the evacuation alert map provided by Boulder County, the first reverse notification to get out was sent about a mile east of the fire's origin at 11:47 a.m. This notification only goes to landlines, cell phones, and email that people have signed up to get alerted. The next evacuation was at 12:15 p.m., which included more of Marshall and Old Superior. The earliest evacuation north of Highway 36 into Louisville was sent at 1:15 p.m. But this neighborhood to the east did not get an evacuation order until 2:51 p.m., long after areas all around it.
I'm sorry, 115 Cherrywood Lane. 115 Cherrywood Lane for a house fire. They have evacuated. 1343.
1343 indicates that dispatch was at 1:43 p.m. 115 Cherrywood Lane is within the boundary that did not receive a reverse notification until 2:51 p.m. We have asked the Boulder County Sheriff's Office, which is understandably busy, why the alert in this area was not sent earlier like it was to the neighborhoods around it. We will update you when we get answers, but also want to point out no one is missing from the areas that we're asking questions about. For Next, I'm Marshall Zellinger.
We've asked every night this week, sign up for your county's emergency alerts before something happened, especially if you do not have a landline. We've put together a page that details how to do it for every county in the metro area. If you go to 9news.com/next, you can find it. Please do it like now during the program while you're thinking about it. And if it doesn't work, let us know. Figure it out. So Colorado has not really seen Democratic Senator John Hickenlooper alongside other state leaders since that fire last Thursday. He did appear with President Biden today. I reached out to the senator's office to ask why, given the seriousness of the event. His spokeswoman said that Senator Hickenlooper has been spending time with his sister, who has a terminal illness. Our best wishes for the senator and his family. The man accused of threatening firefighters with an AR-15 inside the burn area turns out to be quite active in Democratic politics in our state. Stephen Roach is bonded out of jail, and 9 Wants to Know has learned he's the guy who founded the Liberal Political Action Committee, the Colorado Turnout Project. He also owns a consulting company called Boulder Fundraising. Among other Democrats, he worked for Sol Sandoval, the Democrat running against Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. Spokesperson for Sandoval says they cut ties with Roach after the incident. He declined to comment when we got him on the phone. He's looking at several charges, including felony menacing. $5 million from the Boulder County Wildfire Fund is now being made available for fire victims' short-term needs. Out the door now. Donations have poured in from across Colorado and around the world, amounts large and small, including from the viewers of this one random television news program, $2 million. That is absolutely remarkable. There is nothing small about your Word of Thanks microgiving campaign to help the fire victims. To be part of this force for good in our community, scan that QR code on your screen or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491. Sometimes the text function gets wonky. The QR code should work for everybody. Your generous donations are already meeting short-term needs, and they're laying the foundation for years of support in Superior and Louisville. Hey, while we're handing out thank yous, firefighters up there kept a list of every agency that they remember sending help. Take a look to see if your hometown's on there. Take some pride in what our state did. We now know Governor Polis intervened to reduce the sentence of the I-70 truck crash driver over the objection of victims' families.
It is my hope that this gives you some closure on this.
No, it doesn't.
And Colorado's COVID testing isn't doing people much good if they don't find out their results until they're already out of isolation. We'll look inside that issue next. Pardon me, I wasn't ready for this. Democratic Governor Jared Polis said that he wanted to end the circus that was swirling around the 110-year sentence of a truck driver who killed 4 people on I-70. Governors refused to tell us about lobbying for clemency by Hollywood stars like Kim Kardashian West. And now we know how his meeting with the victims' families went. Not well. Here's Marshall Zellinger.
It is my hope that this gives you some closure on this.
No, it doesn't. This is entirely political.
You are just victimizing us again.
This is a recording provided to Next. Democratic Governor Jared Polis telling survivors and victims' family members he was commuting the sentence of I-70 truck driver Rohel Aguilera Medeiros from 110 years to 10.
The punishment that he receives will be what any Coloradan would normally receive for this type of crime.
Today, we received evidence from the trial, videos of the truck on I-70 ahead of the crash. Next Thursday, the judge in the case had a hearing set to reconsider the 110-year sentence.
Why is waiting 2 weeks not the right thing to do?
Well, again, I based on our last conversation, I would have done this last week, but I told you I'd wait past Monday to see if the courts did anything. They didn't.
And they set
the date.
Okay.
Families looking for an explanation got a repeated answer.
Why did you think that you should do this instead of passing on it? Why is it not the right thing to wait 2 weeks?
I'll read that section of the paragraph of the letter again.
No, that's
Okay.
you're not answering my question.
I answered that very question.
Earlier this week, Kyle was able to ask the governor the same question.
Why didn't you let it play out before you intervened?
So here's why. This isn't the fault of the judge who passed the sentence. The judge's hands were tied.
That was true at the time of sentencing, based on the charges Aguilera Medeiros was found guilty of. But next week's hearing was part of the judicial process that allowed for the judge to reconsider. Some of these family members wanted the judge to reconsider, not the governor. And certainly not celebrities who had the governor's ear.
And what did Kim Kardashian West want you to do?
Well, I haven't read all of her tweets. I don't know. There were certainly people that wanted a complete pardoning of the crime.
Why do we continue to ask if the governor was guided by Kim Kardashian West? Because I've received multiple tips that he talked with her about this case. That's why. So our questions have been, what did she ask for versus what families were asking for?
Because then you could ask how the governor weighed the two. For what it's worth, I think I asked him 3 times. I know you've asked him at least twice. The answers are yes or no, and we've yet to get one of those. Mm-hmm. To the issue of the sentence in the first place, mandatory minimums and the rules that they place on judges. The governor seemed to suggest he's interested in taking that up with the legislature.
I talked with the Democratic leaders at the legislature yesterday ahead of the new session, and in the House, Speaker Alec Garnett made it, in our conversation, made it sound like the DAs already have the discretion in what they can charge someone with. In the Senate, Majority Leader Steve Fenberg seemed open to the idea of perhaps reforming this issue.
Marshall, thank you. Long lines for COVID tests in Colorado right now are only the start of the waiting. The state's saying the average turnaround time over the last 2 months is 1 day. But at the moment in this surge, some testing companies are taking up to 5 days to get your results back. 5 days. Not super if you're supposed to isolate with COVID for 5 days. State Health Department says this is a lab staffing issue, and COVID Check Colorado is going to pull staff from other places to cover those lab shortages to hopefully speed up the turnaround times. State Health Department acknowledged today that it's got a technical glitch that's causing COVID cases to be significantly undercounted lately. Like their system's showing hundreds a day when they know that it's closer to 10,000. Be honest, though, cases are a less useful metric for determining serious illnesses in our community, so we rarely even talk to you about case numbers here. We look at COVID positive hospital patients, hospitalizations. That's steadily increasing since Christmas, up 200 a week and approaching the peak of last year's large wave. And we look at test positivity, which continues to set a pandemic record in our state. Omicron may be relatively mild for the vaccinated who get it, but it is spreading like crazy. 26% of tests came back positive last week, quadruple the rate a month ago. While urban Colorado was voting to stick wolves in rural Colorado, some wolves decided to just stroll over the state border and do a little exploring. So now ranchers get the green flag or the red flag to haze them away. Next. Ranchers are not allowed to kill the wolves that are making their way back into Colorado. So Colorado Parks and Wildlife is offering up legal ideas on how to scare them off. CPW's proposed rules would let ranchers use guard animals and also what's called a flattery, basically a string of small flags that apparently look super scary to animals when they blow around in the wind. Ranchers are also allowed to use propane cannons, noisemakers, even pop a wolf with a beanbag round if it comes to it. Those rules were supposed to start in March, but after wolves killed a cow-calf up in Jackson County last month, CPW is letting that hazing begin now.
Hope you enjoyed the brief warm-up today. We touched 57 here in Denver, certainly well above our average, but not quite in record territory. And we weren't the only ones. Look at to the south, 70s in Pueblo and Trinidad, but in northern Colorado, all they could muster the 30s with all that snow. Here we go again, another system pushing into Colorado overnight. That means snow. Yes, heavy snowfall up in the mountains, especially early tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. It could be a bit messy right there around I-70. And just as the Broncos wind things down for the game, a little rain-snow mix here in Denver. I'm really not looking at much accumulation. All of that staying across our northern mountains, about 4 to 8 inches. A little cooler tomorrow as daytime highs stay in the upper 30s and 40s. 38 on Sunday, but sunny skies and mid-50s take us into next week.
Sign up for your county's emergency alerts during the commercial break. I'll have your good news and your feedback next. If we had had the opportunity to ask President Joe Biden a question today, with it being Friday, we probably would have asked him his good news. He likely would have responded with something about ice cream. But there is Marine One at DIA. That took him from Boulder County back to the airport. He will then get on Air Force One and depart Colorado, headed for Nevada and Senator Harry Reid's funeral. It's been a rough couple of weeks for Colorado, so let's have your Friday good news, even if we've only got a second. Kira says after 8 years of her family struggling with infertility, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Meet Elsa Madeline. Congratulations to that happy new family. Colleen shared this photo of a creative approach to sledding in City Park today. Not quite enough snow to make it work and no slope needed because Dad has found a way. Blue writes, if EMS is going to crisis standards of care, why are hospitals still scheduling surgeries? Because crisis care for hospitals is separate than crisis of care for EMS. We'll see you next time.